stick. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Oh, okay. That's good to know.
Okay, good morning. This time for reals. For those that are presenting, please use the mic appropriately. If you go like this, then no one can hear you. Exactly. Please keep it in front of your face. That way everyone in the room can hear and the remote participants can also hear. We have remote participants, or maybe we will eventually. For those presenting, there's a clicker. You can click your slides. You can point at the screen. Ooh, cat toy. Okay. We have a JabberScribe, I believe, and a note taker. The note taker, yes. And I think maybe Natalie was going to be the JabberScribe. Damn it, no. Okay, well, we need a JabberScribe then. Can't go until we have a JabberScribe.
Me neither.
Can't you just tell not to the XMP report? Is there someone who knows how to jabber and would like to be the JabberScribe? Awesome. Thank you, Joel. Great. Now we can move forward. Here is the note well. Hopefully you've noted it well earlier and we can move on. The print is intentionally tiny. There's a bunch of resources for the meeting, where the meeting is here. Meeting agenda material should all be updated with the current set of slides that are going to be presented. All the rest of that. You can download the slides and read this on your own at your own leisure. There are blue sheets going around. Please be sure to sign the blue sheet and pass it to the person to your left or right, wherever it didn't come from. We have a minute taker, a JabberScribe. We have an agenda. It looks like this. Oh, it's not quite all BMP this time. There's some BGP, but no DNS. So it's not like my other meeting. Okay, so is Sriram around? Oh, wait, sorry. Actually, all of these are going to be talked about except for WKC behavior and AS cones. Joe, do you want to say something about your AS cones?
We are working on an update and will present at the next IETF meeting.
Okay. And ideally, the WKC behavior person who's going to present can just update quickly before his presentation. We have a very, very short time span today. We have 1 hour. So all presenters will be kept very close to the time limits noted. Yes, sir.
Comment on AS clones. This is Randy Bush, IJ Anarchist. Would anybody interested in actually trying to make that into something useful and sensible? Talk to some people who know something about security.
Sure, probably. Okay.
It's incredibly helpful.
Sorry, the one piece of sort of working group business to actually talk about today is this grow registries. People should read this and comment it, and we can push it forward to working group last call pretty quickly. It's changing a bunch of the registries for BMP to be expert required to kind of first come, first serve, which I think there's no reason not to change them to first come, first serve. So at least in my opinion, but I'm just one person. Please have a read and some comments on the list, and then we can move it forward or decide not to do it. Okay, Sriram, please come to the mic. Sriram, please come to the mic. You're up. Oh. You have 10 minutes. That includes questions. No exceptions. Oh, also, please stay in the pink thing. You can hold the mic like I did. Here's the clicker.
So good morning. So this is work that's been in the IDR working group for the past 3 years or so. Today, we are presenting it here because we are making a change, trying to make a change from BGP attribute to BGP community for carrying the route leak protection information. And the hope there is that with the BGP community, the deployment can be much faster, considering that vendor implementation changes would not be required. So we basically have two parameters that are part of the route leak protection or the RLP information. Those are the down only and the leak detected. So down only, basically the semantics is that AS is telling the subsequent ASs that I'm sending it to a customer or a lateral peer, and subsequently the update should not go to a lateral peer or a transit provider. The L leak indication is that the semantics is that the ASN detected a leak, the update came from a customer, the ISP doesn't have an alternate route, so it accepted that route and propagating it, but it is warning the subsequent ASs that I detected a leak, but I had to propagate it because of I would have unreachability otherwise. So I will not go into describing the semantics any further than that. There are a bunch of slides with the scenarios. Please feel free to walk through them. We did present it in the IDR interim meeting last week. So I'll skip through the detailed explanations and the scenarios of the RLP semantics. And I would like to jump to, because we have, we'd like to allow more time for the discussion and feedback on the community choice, what type of community, etc. So let me just skip the various things, detection rules, policy recommendation. These are all there in detail in the draft, as well as in these slides, as well as some more slides at the back. Please grab us in the hallway or send us questions on the list. We'll be happy to discuss the semantics with you if you have any questions or suggestions. But so we are jumping right ahead to the community, use of community. So here we have three choices: regular community, large community, and extended community. With the regular community, the limitation that we have is that there is only 16 bits of payload. We have the DO and the L, two separate indicators as part of the RLP information. The DO is 32-bit ASN. The L is also a 32-bit ASN. So if we use regular community, I don't have a slide on that. If you use regular community, we have only 16-bit payload limitation. We'll have to perform some tricks, and that can be done. And it can be shown that with using 3 regular communities, we can accommodate the DO and the L, the 2 ASN values. On the other hand, if we use a large community, then we have 96 bits readily available, of which the first 32 bits are global administrator, and then we can put the DO and the L as the subsequent 4 octets and another 4 octets. So all of that is accommodated in one large community. Next slide. The extended community. Here we have, we will require 2 community attributes to accommodate the DO and the LASN values. We can accommodate the ASN values as they are without any further compression or encoding. So 2 community attributes, that does it. Next, this is the slide where we want to spend the rest of the time. Oh, sorry. So for the rest of my remaining time, please focus on these questions. We would love to have a discussion around these questions here. So basically the questions are, we are considering making this transition from attribute to community. If you advise otherwise, please let us know your thoughts about that. And if the community is good to go with, then the choice between regular community versus large versus extended, we would like to also request your feedback on which of these would work best in terms of a chance to propagate the farthest. And the next talk that Randy is giving says BGP communities have wings. So that sounds like music to me as far as this draft goes, although the intent of his talk is different. So here the community value should propagate as far as the update propagates. So that would be best if that happens. And finally, which of these is best in terms of the deployment speed? With that, I would like to open it up for questions. 5 minutes? Oh, 2.5 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Rüdiger Volk, Deutsche Telekom. Well, this looks fairly easy. The large communities can do it. The other things are somewhat complicated, and we don't like complicated. And yes, for the large communities, to make sure that the propagation works the right way, we quite certainly will need a little bit of documentation, giving advice on how to handle this in the local policy configurations. Without giving that advice, you are not getting an idea how it's going to be handled. And actually, with the large communities available for things like this, my take is that doing some advice on how to handle this in policies is actually a good thing to be done, even keeping in mind the stuff that Randy will be talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So quite clearly, and of course, the large communities work essentially right now. Well, okay, my configuration generator can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the rollout of the router software has not been optimized for pushing out the large communities first. But that is a matter of time that is particular to certain networks, and kind of anything done in extended communities or a separate attribute would take even longer than large community deployment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for all that feedback. In terms of the policy recommendation, we have it in the draft, the basic minimum policy, but you are looking for even more detail, I understand. Okay, thank you.
Jacob Heights, Cisco. I work on XR, iOS XR by default does not pass communities. Someone has to configure to have the communities, or large communities or extended communities, to be passed. If you're relying on the leaking AS to dutifully pass along any communities or attributes, then you're relying on them.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So yeah,
Nope.
so we just quick response. 30 seconds. So the leaking AS, if it's not doing the RLP, hopefully it's not yet RLP adapted or RLP. But however, we are hoping that even though it's not doing RLP, it's doing other things at least, right, in terms of passing a community when it needs to be passed through, like a transitive community. Okay, thank you.
Job Snyder's NTT. I will note that for large communities, there does not yet exist a method to have IANA register well-known values. So a draft needs to be produced to allow for that type of assignment to be possible.
7999, your RFC is large community, is it? 7999.
There is no IANA registry for well-known large communities.
Kind of the IDR chairs have figured out that they can request the global administrator AS, and that will go into the registry there.
Okay, this is
Yeah, and
for me.
kind of my take is that working more with large communities, we probably will be evolving that some way, but the way has been checked for actually doing this.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That sounds good. Further feedback on the list will be very much appreciated.
Randy Bush, you're up. Oh, yes. Super confusing. You control your own fate.
Randy Bush, IJ Anarchist. How many people were at IEPG? Yeah, I still have to give this anyway. Sorry, we could have escaped. Okay, this is mainly, I'll try to be quick. Community use has been growing. The graphs up to the right. All graphs go up to the right, don't they? The communities are ill-defined. It's not just the large ones. There's no registry. The small ones, we really, it's like putting semantics in comment statements. We really don't know what they mean. We really have no rules for them, etc. The place we have rules is BGP attributes, not communities. Okay, so the flavors we have of communities are these. The major taxa are active and passive ones, but we really don't know what any of it means. That's just the Wild West out there. The propagation's a problem. It's said that you should filter. People don't expect them to propagate very wildly. I, for one, did not expect them to propagate wildly. I was surprised. The fact is that given 14% of the transit ASs, non-stub, the transit ASs, 14% propagate to communities. I expected it to be very small, but in fact, 14% seems small, but more than 50% of communities travel more than 4 ASs. 10% travel 6, right? The longest path we saw was 11. This is kind of the ECDF of it. You'll notice, for instance, that about half of the communities travel 4 ASs, which is the diameter of the mean diameter of the internet path length. The stuff goes all over the place. Okay. I want to talk for a moment about on and off path. If one originates P, this is on path. This is where it's going. So here's a community. It's targeted towards 3. It goes to 3. That's on path. This is off path. It wasn't destined here, but it went here anyway. 2 probably should have filtered. Okay. Here's what we see in the distribution of measured communities, and this is measuring through the usual broken glasses of route views and risks, etc., which is we see these communities off path. In other words, this was not marked as destined for the AS it was seen. This is the most interesting. That is not 999. For those of you who know, that's supposed to be, or by convention, that's the black hole, right? So these were seen off path. What's interesting is they're not seen, so weren't seen on path. Who knows? This is just the Wild West. It's crazy out there. Hello. So we decided to break things. We said all experiments we first tested in the lab. Then we estimated what the impact would be so we could make sure we weren't going to break the global internet. And then with some operators' consent, we did some fun things out there. And by the operator's consent, I mean, for instance, Fastly gave us a prefix that we could hijack because they weren't using it at the moment, etc. They were announcing it, but not using it. So click. These are slow is what it is. So what's remote triggered black hole supposed to do? AS1 is supposed to say, hey, AS2, please traffic sync this prefix. And it's usually you send a long prefix like a 32 so that your upstream provider syncs something that's being DOS attacked. Okay, and there's all sorts of rules about it. In fact, an attackee can hijack the prefix. Okay, here's an attacker, hijacks the prefix, announces it, and AS3 syncs traffic that AS1 really wanted. No. Is it like this? Any better? Ah.
It's all right.
So this works well, multi-hop. In other words, from far away. Triggering it's possible for attributes because the black hole prefix is more specific. You usually say black hole is 32 out of my 24. And there was the first presentation at Nanog had a recipe for doing this that had a bug in it. And of course, that bug propagated in documentation, etc. They checked the black hole community and implemented it before checking whether the prefix should have been announced by the person from whom they received it. No validation for communities is possible at all. There's no attribution, there's no signature, there's no nothing. Okay, traffic stealing is cool. Here we were supposed to have this one announces P1, the AS path grows, the AS path grows. Here we've got an AS path length of 4. Here we've got an AS path length of 5. Traffic goes as we expected. AS2 colludes with AS5. And AS2 says, hey, AS6, please prepend. And so what happens is this is now longer path. You can push the right button. So traffic starts this way. It goes back past evil. And this AS can intercept the traffic, get the data from it, et cetera, et cetera. Spyware. Does this actually happen on the internet? Of course not. Here's where it happens. Here's a dying report, et cetera. It's actually in use attacking financial institutions. Okay. So the ASN value is totally ambiguous. Who's the sender and receiver, even in the ones that are documented? There's no defined semantics. Values can be anything. It's used for both signaling and triggering actions. There's no cryptographic protection. You don't know who on the path inserted the community. It's hard to apply filters or understand what the heck is going on. Okay, I read it on the internet, so it has to be good and true. They can be modified, added, and removed by every AS unless you want to modify the well-known ones, in which case some notable router implementers here don't let you do it very easily. No attribution again, no cryptographic protections, but we bet on it. Large communities help a little. Some ideas: don't propagate without knowing what you're doing. On input, drop anything that is not addressed to you or that you don't have an agreement to pass it on to whom you're passing it and only to whom you're passing it. So if Joel gives me something that's destined to Rudiger, do I have an agreement with both Joel and Rudiger to pass it to Rudiger and only do it in that circumstance? Okay. Beware of the well-known communities thing that's in this working group, and only you can prevent forest fires.
Hi, Jared Mach, Akamai. I'm curious, the large BGP communities seem to propagate much further than the 1997 BGP communities. Did you study those at all?
No.
Is there any recommendations in your document around that?
No. This is an academic paper. We only got so far, and
Okay.
good work for future study.
Chris Morrow, Google. So, Jared, maybe you're asking, was Randy going to write a document in Grow that has some recommendations and or other output?
No.
Is that
So I guess my question is, should we align the behavior of the 1997 communities and the large BGP communities and the extended communities behaviors? Should we provide recommendation to the implementers about what those behaviors should be around there? Because by default, the large BGP communities, if they're not understood by an implementation, they will be propagated because of the transitive nature of them. So with that transitive nature, do we want to make recommendations around stripping that? So for example, Juniper has configuration options that allow you to say, I'd like to strip this unknown attribute, or drop any routes with this unknown attribute upon receipt. And that allows you to arbitrarily match routes based on, a value within the TLV. And perhaps we should give guidance to vendors around what configuration capabilities should be there and what should be there by default, because most of them do not send communities by default, but maybe they should, or maybe we should align these behaviors one way or the other.
Good idea. Thank you for volunteering. Rudiger.
reminder? There's about 10 seconds left.
Oh,
Make it quick.
goodness. Yes, I think some documentation about good practice on how the exchange, what BGP information, assuming what responsibility of parties is adequate and should be done. So for Randy's example about transiting stuff from Joel to me, my view would be that, there is bilateral agreement, Randy, between you and me about what we are exchanging. And that may include that you pass on something from Joel, but, it's your responsibility.
Trust is not transitive.
Pardon?
Trust is not transitive.
Kind of
Sign a piece of paper.
with my immediate partners, I have relations and I can control, and whatever goes beyond.
List time. Sorry, thank you. Paolo, please, you're up.
Hello, Paolo Lucente, NTT Communications. Two slides on this two drafts, BMP local RIB and ADS out. Just to update you on what is the status. So the draft was presented in Chicago in March 2017. Next IETF will be a 2 years mark. It's a key draft that is, adding vantage points to the BMP protocol. I think it's really a key draft. It's two key drafts that we really, all of us, operators, vendors, want for a number of use cases that are described in the backup slides, so you can review them because they were already presented. There is plenty of interest. There was discussion on the mailing list and things like that. There was feedback, it was processed and things like that. The second version of the draft only included, refreshed dates. And third version of the drafts is, we are working on it. It was not possible to complete it by, this meeting. But in line with also the previous version and the previous times that I presented, to the working group, we have no structural issues with the draft. Nobody raised anything, structural with it. So we had only to make several clarifications, like also on the mailing list, it appeared clear that sometimes we spoke very loosely about what should be advertised, and both, for the Agile bout and the local RIB, there was some conversation, and there has been also convergence on that. So we are working on those clarifications, and there was only one single change, minor. So there was in the per peer header, there was a filter flag, and we want now to move that as a TLV in the peer up message. And with that, I'm pretty much finished. I just want to say that I really think that these drafts are not rocket science. They are not really trying to do anything magical. It's 2 years almost that they are on this working group. I think we should really try to wrap them up soon and move on to whatever else we want to make around the BMP. Thank you. And I would like to know your feedback, comments, if there is anything.
I would like to ask the room to hum to indicate whether we should start the last call procedure. If you would like this document to go into last call, can you please hum? Okay.
AC Lind of Cisco Systems. Hey, so we did conclude that BMP will be won't be overloaded with anything with respect to the global RIB, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Then I'll add my.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulo.
Yunnan.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is Yunnan. So I'm going to use 5 minutes to quickly describe our draft that proposes BMP for BGP route leak detection. And I'm not going to discuss too much details about solution, but more focused on the motivation and application scenarios. So there have been measures proposed to prevent or avoid route leaks, and these algorithms or measures are typically implemented through various import and export route policies. And yeah, there should be legit methods to validate if any route leak actually happens and if these route policies are correct. So we're proposing a method that could be implemented by a single ISP to validate if there's a route leak within its own AS. Yeah. So I'm going to use three figures to explain where our method stands. So this is the legacy solutions. So without any BGP extension that we'll discuss in the next slides method, ISPs are typically using showing here using import and export policies to prevent route leaks. So for example, if a route arrives from AS2 at AS1, say router 1, and then according to the business relationship between the two ASs, router 1 will add a route mark or tag or something like that to the route, saying, okay, what's the relationship between us? And this information is typically expressed by a ISP-specific communities, and then transferred to the egress router, for example, here R2, and then R2 based on this route mark and its relationship with S3 or S4 to decide if this route is allowed to be advertised. So this is a prevention method, and we'd also like to discuss this BGP open policy method, which, to my understanding, standardized the prevention method a little bit, mainly in 2 points. First, the business relationships are exchanged through the BGP open messages, so that the two assets understand what their relationships are. And then second, based on this exchanged information, the route mark was carried by a so-called IOTC attribute through the BGP route, and then also transferred to the egress. Right. Okay. Just one last word. And we're proposing a method to use BMP to to report the relationship within one AS, so that at the controller, it understands if the route leak actually happens within its own AS without depending on other third-party information or ISP. And thank you. Maybe we can continue discussion offline. Thank you. Okay. Any question?
Jared Mach from Akamai. We're actually using BMP as well right now to validate our policy, our routing policy decisions that we're making, and to validate when we're actually leaking our routes out locations where it's not intended. So even, while you're trying to capture, I think, some of the stuff that the gentleman behind me from Curator has suggested, for the relationship behaviors to identify this programmatically, there's cases where we have address space that we may route internally, but that by policy, we may not want to advertise out specific links to specific ASs. So like I said, we're currently using BMP to actually validate our own routing behavior. And so that, stuff like this is incredibly valuable. So thank you for this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Alexander Azimov, Cursor Labs. Clarification, I'm co-author of BGP Open. Already?
Yeah, maybe we can discuss offline.
My main question is that what we're getting in advance is in terms of BGP prevention. I understand that with BMP, you are getting another way to control, but you are not preventing leaks.
Yeah, it's detection, not prevention. It's detection if there's any leak actually happen.
So you need, so you may have with BGP, for example, with BGP Open, you may have your policy automatically configured on your routers. With this thing, you will have to also separately specify all your peering relationships in your BMP engine. I'm not arguing it doesn't make sense, but just to highlight that it does not simplify the work of preventing root leaks or detecting root leaks. It's just an additional feature.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed.
Is it correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
With that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Job. Oh.
Thank you, sir. Hi, I'm Job Snyders from NTT, one of the Grow chairs. And I wanted to inform the room about some potential for work. A long-standing issue is that we don't really have a canonical reference that we can give to people how to properly deploy routing security. The information we have is spread out over multiple blogs, some snippets in RFCs, there's tribal knowledge, there's great advice stored in IRC channel logs. And this makes it hard for newcomers to the market to set up BGP filters in a proper way because we cannot point them to a document that says, this is how you do it. And if we look at RFCs, generally speaking, an RFC takes at least 1 year to be published. Stable references like BCPs are very useful because they're a stable reference to a problem topic, but they point to RFCs, so the same slowness applies to BCPs as well. And if we look at the problem space of routing security, I feel that the life cycle of information is faster than 12 months. New data sources come into existence. The nature of some data sources can change. New technologies are invented or methods. And it'd be nice if we can somehow keep track of these developments, but also have a document, a singular URL for newcomers to use. So from this context, an idea has arisen to perhaps explore whether it would be possible to, within IETF, look if we can maybe create a living document where we have the benefits of peer review from the working group, but perhaps can speed up its publication cycle by some means. We are not the only ones that have a desire for a faster publication cycle. For instance, the young people with their models also face similar issues. So in this context, the chairs and our operations AD and the IETF chair will have a meeting tomorrow to figure out if we can formulate a strategy and have GROW perhaps be a working group that works on a living document. So with that, I have informed the group of things we are exploring, and I would like to open up the floor for feedback.
AC Lind of Cisco Systems. I'm going to comment on the first one. Actually, in the route, this is the idea of a security document is an excellent idea. And Jeff Haas was asked to look at BGP, and I was asked to look at the IGPs. You know, I would probably, I know IS, but I haven't implemented it myself like I have OSPF. And we were consistent in our progress we have made. We have both not done anything yet, but I think this is a great idea. I mean, I think this really needs to be done. If you could start the ball rolling on the BGP security one document that brings together all the pieces like a generic security considerations for BGP, that would be excellent. It would also help us during the document cycle, whereas, you know, we reference, you know, people bring up generic security problems and we'll hold up documents based on these for specific, you know, somebody who's just, you know, just like adding a single community. Somebody brings up, you know, some valid security concern, but it's not relevant only to this new community. Anyway, I'll give others the floor.
Thank you.
I think this is a great idea too. I love it. I wish more people would go do living documents, things that live in a working group, that are used for the working group, that can be used for external reference, etc. The question I have for you is, what more than a draft do you need? I mean, why do we need extra processes or extra things? Why isn't the draft that lives in the draft repository, that it's reviewed by the working group? Maybe, as you said in the other slide, the routing directorate maybe does a review or something, and it's there, right? It lives there forever. You can revise it anytime you want. There's no extra need for last calls or IESG review or anything like that. What about expiration? It lives forever. I mean, it lives forever in the repository, right? Your version X is there.
So the optics of a draft.
You just update it every 6 months or Brevet or whatever, because I mean, that's part of the thing, right? Because if the technology changes and the features evolve, you would be updating it anyways.
If you look at the optics of a draft, they are different than the optics of an RFC. An RFC carries a certain image, specifically the ones that went to standards track, that certain review steps have happened, that it's a IETF product, or perhaps not in the case of informational or independent. I mean, with a draft, anybody can publish a draft. And the logistics of a draft are different. The URLs change with every ref. I'd be interesting to explore whether there's something that can be created that sits it's not with the same ease of publication as a draft, but is lightweight compared to an RFC. And I'd like a number, LD1 or LD50.
Kevin Patel, sorry to cut in, but I just wanted to reply to Alvaro's comment. I'm actually in favor of having something long-term as an implementer and having my own implementation of BGP. I like to see something standardized so that I can refer to it and adhere to it as and when it comes.
Yeah, Tim Rijsels and Helmut Labs, but speaking as co-author of, well, I formerly worked for RightNCC, and we worked together with Oleg and others on a document that explained exactly how the RPKI, RightNCC RPKI validator works. Now that is going through last call at the moment. But I think something like this would fit better there, because by definition, that thing is going to be outdated the moment it's published. So I like this.
Justin Sierra. So 3 times yes to that. Back to Alvar's comments. I would like to be able to normatively reference this document. And if I do so, it's a draft, I'm stuck in misref forever. And we've got a number of documents sitting there for longer than a year. So we need to figure out how to reference these documents and let our own documents to progress referencing this stuff. It could
if
be
you want
normative
to make
as well, right?
comments, please go to the mic. Thank you for your feedback.
Joel Yegley. Because there's a bunch of present or former ADs in the line, I think part of what happens is we know how to keep working group documents alive forever. Generally, that happens inadvertently, but what we don't actually have a good way is to say that this working group document currently is the product of working group consensus. Without actually saying, well, it's been last called and it's actually headed off to the ISG for processing. So it could be that the only real requirement here is metadata that describes the current state of the document that does not yet exist. But that's really for the current ISG to decide, not for me to speculate on.
So Warren Kamara, and we'll talk about this more later, but I've heard that people both want something that's like an RFC because that has standing and weight, but also not like an RFC because then it has to go through stuff which gives it standing and weight. So kind of following on from what Joel said, you could do this as just a working group document, which you do working group last call on every now and then. And that's what you decide is the new standard one. And then 6 months later, you working group last call it again. And probably some like header at the top being like, the working group is keeping this document alive forever, and it's actually the standard one. But I mean, that's kind of weird and kludgy.
Rüdiger Volk, Deutsche Telekom. It seems to me that just saying a succession of draft versions to present working group consensus is kind of a little bit weak, because actually some specific process is needed to fix that a certain version actually has the consensus and is not just the editor choose to take some current comments and that's it. So kind of having a precise versioning of the official checkpoints, I think is something that needs to be done and could help, say, KUR for some things. And then, of course, I really have the concern. There are things that are actually fundamental and they stay the same for 20 years. And there are things that are currently discussed and that are moving. And kind of, I have the feeling that going for a living document will kind of tend to expose exactly what is being discussed right now. And the fundamental, stable, long-term things being not that well presented to especially the newcomers who really should have the guidance for the long-term, stable stuff first.
Yeah, thank you for your feedback. So to make sure the room is in alignment, we're attacking two problems at the same time here. One is exploring IETF living documents as a concept, and the other is the material itself, routing security explained to newcomers. So this is a bit more challenging than your average document, because usually you only do one of the two at the same time. So the next step is our meeting tomorrow, and then we'll report back to the mailing list on what the outcome is. And regardless of whether IETF can facilitate a process specific for living documents, I think we should start with a draft documenting how we think routing security works in 2018. Final comments?
Yeah. About a year ago, we started an effort to be able to reference non-IETF documents or GitHub stuff. It expired. Should we try to look in this context what could be done?
Sorry, can you repeat your sentence?
We started an effort how to reference the non-IETF documents in IETF drafts. So for informational purposes, might be much better platform than doing draft.
If you can email me a link, I would be
I'll do
appreciated.
so. So Aliyah started it and doesn't happen.
All right, thank you for your time.
I think we're all done unless there's any final comments or questions for previous presenters. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, bye.
See you in Prague. That's a miracle.
So, for now, you could do like just until check it out. You could have a document by you. And then every 6 months, you copy that into another document, which is owned by the three chairs. So once there's consensus, draft IETF Pro, document 1.
Like 10 minutes.